Hey explorers, we know you're very excited about this Iceland video, so we're going to jump right in. The purpose of this video is to help you find Steinlahellir, I don't know how to say this, Steinlahellir cave in southern Iceland. It's between Reykjavik and Vik, so it's going to be a few hours, probably at least 2 or 3 hours away from Reykjavik by car. I recommend renting a car. That's going to be the best way to get here, as I don't know of any tour buses that actually bring you here. It's a little side stop on the road. Definitely worth it though, in my opinion. It was very cool to check out. The geology is very interesting here, and there's some really cool flora inside of the cave. The coordinates to the cave are actually in the description, but this video is going to tell you a little bit about the lore of the cave and how to get there the easiest way. It's on Google Maps, but you can really only see it on Street View. It kind of is indiscernible from the satellite view, whether you're on the road map image or the satellite image. But again, the coordinates are in the description. You can choose whichever line you want. Don't paste both lines into Google Maps because that won't work. The top line will be more precise than the bottom one, but the bottom one is a bit more accurate. So the lore of this cave is very interesting. It has a bunch of little kind of legends that go along with it. The first legend is starting in the 1600s, but we'll get to that in a second. So how you get to this cave initially is you're going to follow Highway 1 eastward, away from Reykjavik. It may be called Route 1 or something, depending on the map that you're using, but Highway 1 is essentially just all that you're going to follow. It's going to be on the left side of the road if you're coming from Reykjavik. If you're coming from Vik, it's going to be on the right side of the road. That means that the cave is northern. The entrance to the cave is on the southern wall of the little geological feature that's there, but if you're looking at it, the entrance is northward. You're going to walk northward into the cave. The cave doesn't actually look like a cave from the outside. It looks like a strange wooden wall built into an archway on a rock, which is interesting, and it caught our eye, and we actually turned around and pulled over into it. There's a little dirt road. It's on the left side of the road if you're coming from Reykjavik, on the right side if you're coming from Vik. I don't recommend going on here unless you have a 4x4 or a large rental vehicle, because we were in a little Volkswagen Polo and it kind of almost decimated our car. The parking lot's very small. It can only fit about 3 cars at a time, and there's a little board in the parking lot that tells you a little bit about the cave. So we're going to jump into some lore here. So between 1820 and 1902, the local politicians in the area used the cave as a meeting place, which is kind of interesting. I'd love to see a parliament gather in a cave. And a lot of the lore here is quite a bit violent, and the one we're talking about right now will have occurred in 1858, according to the books. The local farmers of the area were very upset about a new ordinance that was set out by the sheriff at the time. He was just referred to as the Sheriff of Ranga in everything that I read about it. The order was that all the sheep had to be washed in order to fight this weird contagious mange that affected livestock. That's both the cattle and the sheep in the area. It didn't really bother horses that much for some reason. We still don't know a lot about this strain, but at the time they knew that if you had cleaned the animals, if you washed them, then the animals were much less likely to contract it. So the farmers were actually chased out of the town by the sheriff, and they hid out in the cave with their horses. It's a bit of a sizable cave. If you're from America, this was one of the biggest caves I've been in. It's definitely not a minor geological feature to me, but there are massive caves in Iceland, so you may think that this is very small. But it's big enough to fit a bunch of guys and their horses. So that's exactly what these farmers did. They hid in there, and then eventually the sheriff rode out on horseback, and he found them inside the cave, pulled out a whip, and started trying to whip them as punishment for not following the ordinance. But the farmers, being greater in number, they fought back, and they drove the sheriff to the edge of the Hellsvatn pool, which is pretty nearby. You actually see it if you look across the way while you were there. But the winter that year was kind of harsh, and that's what season it was when this occurred. So if this sheriff had actually been submerged in the water, he definitely would have died, because Iceland's water is just freezing. Salt water has a lower freezing temperature than freshwater, so the ocean can actually be below freezing temperature, and that's the case in Iceland. So as these men were cornering the sheriff and had him in the water, the deputy arrived just in time, and he recalled the ruling in exchange for the farmers sparing the life of the sheriff. So the farmers backed off. They had won, and they rode back home and told their families and friends all about their victory. And this kind of became a local legend in all the villages surrounding the area, but it was really only told by the farmers and not the constables, because the constables were just so humiliated by it. There's another fun little story that was about a shipwreck. Well, it's not fun for the subjects of this story. It's interesting because it seems a bit exaggerated to me. I don't know if it's true. These are really just stories, but the story goes in the early 1600s, about a dozen sailors were shipwrecked. There were more than a dozen on the ship. About a dozen survived, apparently, and they were shipwrecked on the coast, the southern coast of Iceland, and they walked inland until they found this cave. And as it was winter, and if you know anything about the weather in Iceland, you know that you need shelter. So they went inside this cave and they carved their names in there. If you actually go to this cave, you can see their names carved on there. We have it in our footage. But they quickly ran out of food in there, and fighting broke out amongst them, and then eventually everybody died. It's not clear, based on the evidence that I found, that whether all the men killed each other, or they starved to death, or both, or a mixture somewhere in there. It's not clear, but we do know that everybody died inside this cave. This is kind of talked about a little bit on the sign that's outside of the cave, but I'll let you read that when you get there, because it has a slight variation to what I was able to find online and in books, and the story does vary immensely from your source material. So I will let you discover what you want about this story. This is a story that is a result of me mixing them together, and this is what I think is most likely to have happened, if this happened at all. There are a bunch of other stories about this cave. A lot of them revolve around the hanging ferns that come down from the ceiling. A lot of people say that you can get the spirit of the sailors that died there if you bring some of the moss with you outside of the cave, that their spirit will cling to the moss, or the ferns. That's spooky to me. Didn't risk it. It's probably just ferns, but you never know. There are also a few other legends about tiny elves that live inside of the hanging ferns. So we'll let you make your own judgments about this cave. Let us know what you think about in the comments. We hope you enjoy this cave, and remember to follow good wilderness ethics. Don't camp here. There are signs. Don't urinate or use the bathroom anywhere near the cave, as people do come here, even though it is off the beaten path. People do come here, and it's not your land, so you shouldn't go to the bathroom here or leave any litter behind, especially if you don't have permission from the landowner. You should never leave litter behind anyway, but refuse I'm talking about from your body. You should ask the landowner if you need to go to the bathroom, or carry out. You should definitely carry out all your litter here. But again, just be respectful of the land, because people may have died here, and even if they didn't die there, it's part of our planet. So take care of it as best you can. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out our other Iceland videos, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you want to see more content from us. It really helps us out and lets us know what you guys like and what you don't like. Have some safe travels in Iceland, and enjoy your trip.